When my husband said, "You didn't really give up anything," I felt something inside me grow very quiet. He did not shout. He did not look angry. He said it like it was a simple fact. We were sitting at the kitchen table. The same table where I had packed his lunches for 22 years. The same table where I helped our children with homework. The same table where I stayed up late, waiting for him to come home from work. I remember I was holding a dish towel in my hands. I had just finished washing the plates. My hands were still wet. "You didn't really sacrifice," he said again. "You just did what any wife would do." And I smiled. Not because I agreed. Not because it didn't hurt. But because after so many years, I did not know what else to do. That was the moment I realized something very painful. The man I built my whole life around had forgotten what I gave up to build his. When I married Daniel, I was 23 years old. I had big dreams back then. I wanted to be a teacher. I loved children. I loved books. I loved the feeling of standing in front of a room and explaining something simple in a way that made someone's eyes light up. Daniel was kind, quiet, hardworking. He had just started his own small construction business. He used to say, "Give me 5 years, and I'll build us a good life." I believed him. In the beginning, we were a team. We lived in a tiny apartment with thin walls and one small balcony. We had mismatched furniture and a secondhand sofa that made noise every time someone sat down. But we were happy. At night, we would sit on the balcony with 2 cups of tea. He would talk about blueprints and projects. I would talk about the children in my training class. One evening he said, "If my business grows, will you stay home with our kids one day?" I laughed and said, "We don't even have kids yet." He smiled. "Just promise me you'll think about it." 2 years later, I was pregnant with our first son. The business was still new. Money was tight. Daniel was working long hours. He looked tired every evening, but proud. One night he said softly, "If you go back to work right away, who will stay with the baby?" I looked at him. I looked at our tiny living room. I looked at the future I had imagined for myself. "I can pause my career," I said. "Just for a little while." He kissed my forehead. "You're amazing," he whispered. That little while became years. We had 2 children. Then 3. Daniel's business grew slowly. He was away most of the day. Sometimes even weekends. He said it was all for us. And I believed that too. I woke up before sunrise every day. I packed lunches. I washed clothes. I cleaned floors. I attended school meetings alone. I learned how to fix leaking taps and broken drawers because he was too busy. When the children were sick, I stayed up all night. When Daniel was stressed, I listened quietly. I told myself, this is what love looks like. This is partnership. I stopped thinking about my teaching degree. My certificates stayed in a folder in the closet. Whenever someone asked, "Do you work?" I would smile and say, "I stay home." It sounded small when I said it. But my days never felt small. Years passed. The children grew taller. The house became bigger. Daniel's business became successful. We moved into a beautiful home with a wide kitchen and a wooden dining table. The kind I used to see in magazines. People would visit and say, "Daniel, you've done so well." And he would smile proudly. Sometimes he would add, "It wasn't easy." I would stand nearby, holding a tray of coffee cups. I would smile too. But I began to notice something. When he told the story of his success, I was not part of it. He talked about risks he took, long nights he worked, deals he closed. He never talked about the nights I stayed awake alone, the birthdays he missed that I made special, the times I told the children, "Daddy is working hard for us." One evening, at a family dinner, his brother said, "Daniel, you're lucky to have a wife who doesn't pressure you to earn more." Daniel laughed lightly. "Well, she doesn't really understand business anyway." The table went quiet for a second. He did not mean to hurt me. I could see that. He said it casually, but something inside me felt very small. Later that night, I asked him gently, "Why did you say I don't understand?" He looked confused. "I didn't mean it like that. I just meant you don't deal with it every day." "I deal with everything else every day," I said softly.
He sighed.
Why are you being sensitive? That word, sensitive, it became a wall between us. When the children needed money for school trips, I asked him. When I wanted to redecorate the living room, I asked him. When I thought about maybe working part-time now that the children were older, he said, "Why?"
We don't need the money.
It's not about the money, I said. Then what is it about? He asked. I did not know how to explain that I wanted to feel seen. I wanted to feel like more than background support. The children left for college one by one. The house became quieter. For the first time in many years, I had hours alone. I found my old folder in the closet. My teaching certificates were still there. The paper was slightly yellow. I ran my fingers over my name. I felt both proud and sad. When I told Daniel I was thinking of applying for a teaching assistant job, he looked surprised. At this age, he asked gently.
I'm only 45, I said.
He smiled. Why stress yourself? You've had it easy at home. Just enjoy life now. Easy. I thought about the sleepless nights, the endless chores, the emotional weight of holding a family together. But I stayed quiet. Small moments kept adding up. He would say things like, I built everything we have. Or, without my hard work, none of this would exist. Each time I would nod. But inside, I felt invisible. The turning point came on a Sunday afternoon. The children were visiting. The house was full again, just like old times. Laughter in the living room. Dishes clinking in the kitchen. I had spent 2 days cooking everyone's favorite meals. At the table, our oldest son said, Dad, you sacrificed so much for us. We're grateful. Daniel smiled proudly. Then he said something that stopped my heart. Yes, he said. I gave up everything to build this life. It wasn't easy being the only one carrying the weight. The only one. I felt my daughter look at me quickly. I tried to keep my face calm. After dinner, when everyone was in the garden, I stayed in the kitchen, washing dishes alone. Daniel came in and said lightly, You okay? I turned off the tap. Did you really carry the weight alone? I asked quietly. He looked confused. What do you mean? You said you were the only one. He shrugged. Well, financially, yes. And everything else? I asked. He sighed again. That same tired sigh. You stayed home. That's not the same as what I did. There it was.
Clear.
Simple.
Honest.
Not the same, I repeated. You didn't lose anything, he said. You chose to stay home. You didn't sacrifice a career. You barely started one. His words were not loud, but they were heavy. I looked at him, at the man I loved for over 2 decades. I gave up my dream, I said softly. He shook his head. You would have quit anyway when the kids came. That was the moment. Not anger, not shouting, just a deep, deep realization. He truly believed what he was saying. All those years, he thought my life was easy, comfortable, without cost. I felt tears in my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Okay, I whispered. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in bed and thought about every choice I made. I remembered the job offer I declined when our second child was born. I remembered watching my classmates move forward in their careers. I remembered telling myself, this is worth it. We are building something together. Were we? Or was I building him? In the quiet of that night, I understood something painful. Love does not erase sacrifice. And silence does not make it smaller. The next morning, I woke up early. The house was still asleep. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. For the first time in many years, I asked myself a simple question. What do I want now? Not what Daniel wants. Not what the children need. Not what people expect. What do I want? The answer came slowly. I wanted to feel alive again. I wanted to use my voice. I wanted to teach. That week, I applied for a position at a small local school. When I told Daniel, he looked uneasy. Are you still upset about Sunday? He asked. This is not about being upset, I said calmly. This is about me.
He was quiet for a long time.
You really think I don't value you? He asked. I looked at him honestly. I think you forgot. He did not argue. The first day I walked into that classroom, My hands were shaking. The children were noisy and curious. The walls were covered in drawings. I felt something inside me wake up. After class, a little girl handed me a drawing and said, "Thank you for helping me read." I held that paper like it was gold. When I came home, Daniel asked, "How was it?" I smiled. A real smile.
It was hard, I said.
And beautiful. Over the next months, something changed between us. He started asking more questions about my day. One evening, he said quietly, "I never thought about what it cost you." I did not answer right away. He continued, "I was so focused on providing that I forgot you were giving too." That was the closest he had ever come to saying sorry. It was not dramatic. It was not dramatic. It was not perfect, but it was real. We began to talk more openly. Not about money, not about business, about feelings. He admitted he felt pressure all those years. He thought if he did not succeed, he would fail us. I told him I felt pressure too.
To be perfect.
To never complain. We both carried weight, just in different ways. And for the first time, he saw mine. Now, when I look back, I do not regret staying home with my children. I do not regret supporting my husband. Those years were full of love. But I learned something important. Sacrifice should not be silent. If you give up something, it still matters. Even if you chose it. Even if you did it out of love. One evening recently, Daniel was telling a friend about our life. He said, "We built everything together." Just one word changed.
We.
I caught his eye from across the room. He smiled at me. A softer smile than before. And I realized something else. Sometimes people do not see your sacrifices because they are busy surviving their own fears. That does not make your giving small. It just means you may need to remind them who you are. I am not just the woman who stayed home. I am not just the support behind the success. I am a teacher, a mother, a partner. And my sacrifices were never nothing. They were love. And if you are listening to my story tonight and you feel unseen, I want to tell you this. Your quiet work matters. Your love counts. Your dreams are not too late. Sometimes, the most important thing we can do is remember ourselves. And gently teach others to remember us too.